In the twisting spires of Commorragh, where reality bends to the will of architects who have forgotten the meaning of mercy, the greatest amphitheaters rise like monuments to refined cruelty. Here, in arenas carved from living bone and decorated with the screaming faces of those who dared oppose the Dark City's masters, the art of murder reaches its highest expression through the performances of the Wych Cults. These sanctified spaces echo with the death cries of countless victims, their agony distilled into psychic sustenance that feeds the withering souls of an entire species balanced precariously on the edge of spiritual extinction. Silent Nightwisper moves across the blood-slicked arena floor with the fluid grace of a predator born to hunt, her pale flesh adorned with ritual scars that tell the story of 5 centuries spent perfecting the art of inflicting exquisite suffering upon others. Each mark carved into her skin represents a moment of transcendent agony, experienced or delivered, a testament to her dedication to the sacred mysteries of pain that sustain her immortal existence. The combat drugs coursing through her enhanced nervous system sing in harmony with the psychic emanations of terror rising from her dying opponents, creating a symphony of sensation that feeds both body and soul with equal intensity. Her weapons are extensions of her will made manifest in steel and monomolecular edges, each blade crafted by the finest artificers of the Dark City to channel and amplify the suffering of those who fall beneath their caress. The razor-sharp claws extending from her fingertips have been enhanced through centuries of ritual surgery and alchemical treatment, transformed into instruments capable of delivering precise cuts that maximize agony while prolonging the victim's conscious experience of their own destruction. Every aspect of her equipment has been designed not merely to kill efficiently, but to extract the maximum possible psychic nourishment. From each death she orchestrates, the crowd that fills the amphitheater's towering galleries represents the pinnacle of Dark Eldar society, noble houses whose power is measured in the suffering they command, Cabal warriors whose raids bring fresh victims to feed the arena's insatiable hunger, and homunculi whose surgical artistry transforms flesh into living sculptures of agony. They watch with the discriminating appreciation of connoisseurs as Silane performs her deadly ballet, their enhanced senses drinking in every nuance of pain and terror that she wrings from her opponents like vintage wine from the finest vineyards of anguish. To understand the true nature of her existence, one must appreciate the fundamental truth that drives all Dark Eldar society. They are a species caught between extinction and damnation, sustained only by their ability to feed upon the suffering of others while avoiding the hungering attention of the chaos god Slanesh. Each moment of agony they inflict strengthens the barriers around their souls, purchasing another day of existence with currency minted from the torment of lesser beings. The arena serves as both entertainment and sacrament, transforming murder into high art while providing the psychic sustenance necessary for their continued survival. Silane's journey to this pinnacle of predatory perfection began centuries ago in the shadowed halls of the Cult of Strife, where young Drukhari, with sufficient potential, are transformed into living weapons through processes that would shatter the minds of lesser species. The ritual scarification that marked her initiation involved not merely the carving of sacred symbols into her flesh, but the systematic rewiring of her nervous system to experience pain as pleasure and terror as intoxication. Each cut of the ceremonial blade awakened new pathways of sensation, preparing her body to serve as both instrument and vessel for the refined cruelties she would later master. The Phoenix-backed combat stimulants that flow through her bloodstream represent the culmination of millennia spent perfecting the art of chemical enhancement, their formulation adjusted to her specific physiology through countless battles and endless refinement. These substances do not merely increase her speed and strength, but heighten every aspect of her sensory experience to levels that would prove fatal to unenhanced individuals. Pain becomes ecstasy, violence transforms into transcendence, and the act of killing achieves the status of religious revelation as the drugs synchronize her enhanced nervous system with the psychic emanations of her dying victims. The daily rhythm of her existence revolves entirely around the preparation for and recovery from arena combat, each day measured not by the passage of time, but by the quality and intensity of sensation achieved. pre-dawn hours are spent in meditation designed to sharpen her sensitivity to the psychic frequencies of suffering, while afternoons involve weapons practice that has elevated blade work to the level of high art. Her body requires constant maintenance through a regimen of surgical enhancement, chemical supplementation, and ritual scarification that keeps her at the peak of predatory efficiency, while slowly transforming her into something that barely resembles her original form. Competition within the Wych Cults operates according to principles that would seem insane to less refined species, where success is measured not merely by survival, but by the artistry displayed in the process of killing. A crude butcher who simply slaughters opponents without style or finesse will find herself relegated to the preliminary matches that serve as warm-up entertainment for the crowd, while those who can transform murder into performance art rise to headline positions where the quality of victims matches the expectations of the audience. Ceylan has achieved the highest levels of this hierarchy through innovations in technique that have redefined what it means to kill beautifully. Her signature method involves the systematic dismantling of opponents through precisely calculated wounds that maximize both pain and psychological terror while ensuring consciousness remains intact for as long as possible. The sequence of cuts follows patterns derived from ancient torture manuals and enhanced through personal experimentation, each slash designed to sever specific nerve clusters while avoiding immediate fatal damage. The result is a performance that can last for hours, as her victim experiences levels of agony that push the boundaries of what flesh and mind can endure, all while maintaining the grace and elegance that marks true artistry. The audience's response to such performances provides the psychic nourishment that sustains not only Ceylan but the entire Dark City, their collective appreciation of refined cruelty, creating waves of emotional energy that strengthen the barriers protecting their souls from Slaaneish's hunger. They do not merely watch the gladiatorial contests, but participate in them through their empathic connection to the suffering being inflicted, experiencing vicarious satisfaction from each scream and feeding upon the terror of the dying through senses evolved specifically for such consumption. Between performances, Ceylan endures withdrawal from both chemical stimulants and psychic feeding that leaves her hypersensitive to environmental stimuli, while simultaneously craving ever greater levels of sensation to achieve satisfaction. Her enhanced nervous system, designed to register every nuance of pain and pleasure with supernatural clarity, becomes a source of constant torment during these periods of enforced abstinence. The ritual scars covering her body itch with phantom pains that can only be silenced through fresh violence, while her augmented metabolism demands regular doses of refined suffering to maintain basic functionality. The psychological toll of such existence extends far beyond mere addiction to violence and sensation, encompassing a complete transformation of identity that gradually erases whatever she might once have been before, embracing the path of the gladiator. Memories of her pre-arena life fade beneath layers of accumulated trauma and chemical modification, replaced by an existence defined entirely by the rhythm of combat and the pursuit of ever greater refinements in the art of inflicting suffering. Relationships become impossible to maintain when every interaction is filtered through predatory instincts honed to perfection, while normal emotions are replaced by variations on the central theme of hunger for sensation. Her reputation within the gladiatorial community has grown to legendary proportions through performances that have redefined the boundaries of what audiences consider possible in terms of creative violence. Younger Wyches study recordings of her matches with the devotion of religious disciples, analyzing every movement and technique in hopes of incorporating her innovations into their own fighting styles. Arena masters across Commorragh compete to feature her in their games, understanding that her presence guarantees sold-out crowds and the kind of psychic emanations that satisfy even the most jaded noble palates. The influence of her techniques extends beyond individual combat into the broader culture of the Wych Cults, where her methods of extracting and consuming suffering have become standard curriculum in training programs throughout the Dark City. Her particular blend of physical prowess, chemical enhancement, and psychic sensitivity has inspired innovations in gladiator development that have elevated the overall quality of arena entertainment, while pushing participants to ever greater extremes of modification and specialization. Yet those who knew her during the early stages of her career speak in whispers of the gradual changes they have witnessed, describing a process of systematic dehumanization, so subtle as to be nearly invisible from day to day, but shocking when viewed across the centuries of her rise to prominence. The ambitious young initiate who once struggled with the moral implications of necessary cruelty has been replaced by something that approaches suffering with the same analytical detachment others might bring to mathematical problems or engineering challenges. The transformation reaches its logical conclusion during the Feast of Malediction, Commorragh's greatest gladiatorial tournament, where the finest warriors compete for prizes that include decades of restored youth, purchased through the concentrated agony of captured souls. Here, facing her greatest rival in combat that transcends mere violence to become transcendent art, Silene experiences a moment of perfect clarity, where the boundaries between self and other, predator and prey, disappear entirely in the communion of shared suffering. The battle itself unfolds like a choreographed dance of death, each movement calculated to maximize both aesthetic impact and psychic resonance, while displaying technical mastery that borders on the supernatural. Weapons clash in patterns too complex for unenhanced minds to follow, while the combatants weave through sequences of attack and counter-attack that have been refined through centuries of practice into something approaching religious ritual. The crowd falls silent in appreciation of artistry, so perfect that commentary would constitute blasphemy, their collective breath held as they witness the ultimate expression of their culture's highest ideals. In the moment of victory, as her blade finds the perfect angle to deliver maximum agony while ensuring her opponent remains conscious to experience every second of her death, Silene achieves a state of transcendent unity with her purpose that represents the apex of gladiatorial achievement. The psychic emanations of her victim's terror flow through her enhanced nervous system like liquid ecstasy, while the crowd's appreciation creates feedback loops of satisfaction that amplify every sensation beyond the boundaries of normal experience. She becomes, in that instant, the perfect embodiment of Dark Eldar nature, beautiful, deadly, and sustained entirely by the anguish of others. The aftermath of such perfect performances leaves her in a state that can only be described as spiritual fulfillment, though the satisfaction proves as temporary as all other pleasures in a society built upon the endless pursuit of sensation. Within hours, the euphoria fades to leave her craving ever greater extremes of violence and suffering, the bar of what constitutes adequate stimulation raised once again by her own success. The cycle continues, with each victory raising the stakes for future performances, demanding innovations in cruelty that push the boundaries of what flesh and mind can endure. Her influence on younger generations of gladiators extends beyond mere technique to encompass a fundamental reshaping of how the witch cults approach their sacred duties. Training programs now incorporate her methods of chemical enhancement and psychic feeding, while arena design has evolved to better showcase the kinds of prolonged suffering that she has made fashionable among discerning audiences. The entire institution of gladiatorial combat bears the imprint of her innovations, from the drugs administered to participants to the criteria used to judge performance quality. Yet within the highest circles of Dark Eldar society, debate rages about what figures like Silene represent for their species' future and the sustainability of a culture built upon such extremes of specialization. Some argue that the Wych Cults produce the purest expression of Drukhari nature, beings who have transcended the weaknesses of empathy and conscience to become perfect instruments of predation. These individuals see in her the evolutionary destiny of their race, creatures so perfectly adapted to their environment that they represent the apex of what their species can achieve. Opposition voices contend that such extreme specialization creates beings who are effective only within the narrow confines of arena combat, lacking the flexibility and strategic thinking required for survival in the broader political landscape of Commorragh. They point to the complete transformation of personality and identity that marks advanced gladiators as evidence that the pursuit of perfection through violence ultimately destroys the very consciousness it seeks to enhance, leaving behind only appetite and instinct wearing the mask of sophistication. The theological implications of her existence raise questions that even the most learned scholars of Dark Eldar philosophy struggle to address adequately. Does the systematic cultivation of cruelty and the refinement of suffering into art represent the highest form of devotion to their species' survival, or does it constitute a form of spiritual corruption that threatens the very values they claim to defend? The institutional culture of the witch cults encourages such dedication, while simultaneously producing individuals so removed from normal social interaction that they become functionally alien to their own society. Her personal quarters reflect this fundamental alienation, containing only the most essential equipment required for combat preparation and physical maintenance, while lacking any trace of the personality or interests that might once have defined her individual identity. The space functions more like a weapons storage facility than a living area, its sterile efficiency serving the needs of something that has become more tool than person in its pursuit of predatory perfection. The relationships that sustain most individuals have been replaced in her case by professional associations based on mutual utility rather than genuine connection or affection. Her closest associates are fellow gladiators who share similar levels of enhancement and comparable degrees of psychological modification, but even these relationships are colored by competitive rivalry and the knowledge that circumstances might require them to face each other in mortal combat. Her trainers and support staff serve with dedication born of professional respect and healthy fear rather than personal loyalty, understanding that their continued survival depends upon maintaining her effectiveness as an instrument of refined cruelty. The physical evidence of her transformation becomes more apparent with each passing year, as surgical enhancements gradually replace larger portions of her original anatomy, while chemical modifications alter her appearance beyond easy recognition. Blessed substances flow beneath synthetic skin that no longer registers temperature or texture with the sensitivity of natural tissue, while sensory implants provide enhanced capability at the cost of the expressive qualities that once made her gaze recognizably personal rather than predatory. Recent developments in arena design and opponent selection suggest that even her elevated standards for stimulation may be approaching the practical limits of what can be achieved within the constraints of Commorragh's resources and the availability of suitable victims. The crowds that once reacted with gasps of amazement to her innovations now require ever more extreme displays to achieve the same levels of psychic satisfaction, while her own enhanced nervous system demands correspondingly greater doses of suffering to provide adequate nourishment. The question of sustainability haunts not only her individual trajectory, but the broader institution of gladiatorial combat and its role in Dark Eldar society. If the pursuit of perfect violence ultimately produces beings so specialized that they become incapable of adaptation to changing circumstances, then the very success of the system may contain the seeds of its own destruction. The witch cults face the challenge of maintaining relevance in a society that values innovation and surprise, while simultaneously preserving the traditions and techniques that define their cultural significance. As the years accumulate and new challenges emerge to test the boundaries of what audiences consider entertaining, figures like Silin stand as both inspiration and warning about the ultimate destination of a culture built upon the systematic cultivation of cruelty. They represent the logical endpoint of institutional dedication to sensation and suffering, embodying the perfect fusion of artistry and atrocity that defines the highest achievements of their civilization. Yet their very perfection may render them obsolete as the society that created them evolves beyond their ability to provide adequate stimulation. The arena continues to demand fresh innovations in technique and presentation, driving gladiators to seek ever more extreme forms of enhancement and creation, specialization in their quest to maintain audience interest. New drugs promise greater sensitivity to psychic emanations, while surgical modifications offer improved reflexes and enhanced durability at the cost of further erosion of whatever humanity might remain. The arms race between performer capabilities and audience expectations accelerates with each season, pushing participants toward modifications that may ultimately prove incompatible with continued existence. Her legacy within the gladiatorial community extends beyond individual achievement to encompass a fundamental transformation of how the witch cults understand their purpose and methodology. Training programs now incorporate her insights into the relationship between physical technique and psychic feeding, while arena architecture has evolved to better facilitate the kinds of prolonged performances that she pioneered. The entire culture of gladiatorial combat bears the imprint of her innovations, from the selection criteria used to identify promising candidates to the evaluation metrics applied to judge performance quality. Yet those who study the broader implications of her career trajectory speak in hushed tones about the possibility that she represents not the culmination of gladiatorial evolution, but merely another stage in a process that may ultimately lead to something beyond current understanding. If the pursuit of perfect violence can transform a person into something that barely resembles the original, what might emerge from further iterations of the same process? The answer to that question may determine not only her individual fate, but the future of an entire civilization built upon the foundations of others' suffering. As we withdraw from the blood-soaked arenas where she continues her eternal dance with death, we must confront the uncomfortable truth about the symbiotic relationship between performer and audience that sustains this theater of cruelty. The gladiators who fight for entertainment have become perfect expressions of their species' nature, but they could not exist without the hunger of those who watch and feed upon their performances. In transforming suffering into art, they have created a system where predator and prey, performer and audience, become indistinguishable roles in an endless cycle of spiritual cannibalism that defines the very essence of Dark Eldar civilization.